Freedmen, reparationists, allies, thank you again for attending Rare. Today we're going to have a great show. First, I want to introduce our host, Cynthia McDonald. Cynthia is co-host with us. Cynthia is an atheist who also practices the philosophy of Buddhism and has a relatively extensive knowledge with regards to Christianity and other religions. We also have as our special guest today, we have David Hartful. David is a Navayana Buddhist. I met David actually 2019, I believe it was, in Howard University, where we were actually attending the Marianne Williamson conference with regards to reparations, in regards to her as a presidential candidate. So during that time, I learned that David was a Buddhist. He is a part of a particular sect of Buddhism, which is really interesting. And this should be a great show. So with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let David introduce himself and take over.
Well,
how you doing, David?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing real good. So my name's Dave Hartful, and I grew up in Tennessee. I had a pretty easy upbringing. You know, we grew up middle class and whatnot. But I got older and I started working, and I felt a deep sense of dread. Like I had deep anxiety and deep depression. I had a lot of social skill problems, a lot of anger pent up. And so I was trying to come up with ways to work through this so I could have relationships and be able to move through the world. So I understood that meditation could really help with these problems that I was having. So I started studying meditation. And then from meditation, I started learning mindfulness. And mindfulness is the secularized version of Buddhism and Eastern philosophy. And they just try to take the methods of meditation, but they don't want to put any of the spirituality with it. That way, people of all faiths can join and people with no faiths can join. But I really wanted to learn Buddhism. I wanted to know the root of where it was coming from. So I started going around and I found a couple of Buddhist groups and I would talk to them. Often I'd be the only black person there, definitely the only freedman. And if the question of social justice came up, normally they would say, well, that's outside the scope of Buddhism. They would say that Buddhism is about conquering your internal struggle. And so once you do that, it doesn't matter what's happening externally to you. Well, that's really easy for someone who's privileged and white and got a bunch of money and not discriminated on the job. It's real easy to say that. It's real easy to say if I'm sitting here with a fridge full of food that, you shouldn't worry about being hungry. You know what I mean? Like, that's a really messed up thing to say, and I know you haven't eaten. So I started looking on my own about Buddhism and social justice. And there actually is a lot of Buddhists that are involved in social justice. But the greatest one, the most in-depth thinker of it was Ambedkar. And so Ambedkar, he was born in the late 1800s. And he was born for 1900. And he was born to, he was a Dalit. And so Dalit is the correct term for the more common untouchable. It's actually very derogatory to say the word untouchable. So the Dalits suffer from untouchability due to Hinduism. And so Ambedkar was growing up and he would go to school. He was a very intelligent man. A lot of people don't realize the state he was from, the Dalits are called Mars. And when the British invaded, it was around the time of like the Napoleonic Wars, and Britain was very involved in various conflicts all over the world. So when the British East India Company came into India, they were basically told you had to figure out how to conquer this place yourself. So they got guns and gave them to the Dalits. And the Dalits are the first ones to fight on the side of the British to take over India. And the battle was in, if I remember correctly, it was 1818. And it was called Bhima Korigan, and that's the beginning of the Dalit struggle for freedom. And so Ambedkar's people were actually descended from those who fought in 1818. And so a lot of his family was part of the military. And he was born in a town called Military Headquarters of War, or Mahal for short. So his family was pretty privileged because his father was in the British military, or the Indian contingent in the British military. So he was able to get a very good education. So he was going to these really good schools, but he was a Dalit. So he had to sit separate from all the high caste Hindus. And he also wasn't allowed to drink from the same water container as everybody else. He had to, back then, he would have to ask a high caste kid to take the dipper. And it was a long handled dipper, especially for him. And the high caste would stand at a distance while he drank from the dipper. I mean, it's a very dehumanizing thing. It's very similar to what we went through with fountains here in America in the South. But with all that being said, he still graduates at the top of his class. He ends up going to study law at Gray's Inn in England, which is the best law school in England. He studies economics at the London School of Economics under John Maynard Keynes. He was a student of John Maynard Keynes back then. And he wrote a whole treatise on whether you should back money with gold or silver, or both gold and silver. While he was at the London school, he actually was like a consultant with the anthropology department. So he was in India, they would not teach him Sanskrit because he was a Dalit. So he goes to India and he goes to England to learn Sanskrit. And then he gives the people studying Sanskrit knowledge of what it's really like to be in India. So after that, he goes to Columbia University here in America. And he gets even more degrees. So he's gone to some of the best schools all over the world. And then he comes back to India to help apply to the Dalits. And so he's known. I'm going to go through two actions that I think are very important. The first one would be the Shudwar water reservoir of 1927. So in 1927, the Dalits were trying to organize to fight the high caste Hindus' oppression. So they met in Bombay, and again, Dalits weren't allowed to drink from the same water reservoir as all the high caste Hindus. The high caste Hindus were drinking from the Chadwar water reservoir. So what was happening was they were having to pay castemen to go get their water for them, or they had to get it from another source. Another well closer to the village. So when you have a large conference like that, you need a lot of water and a lot of amenities for a lot of different people. So asking high caste Hindus to bring over pitchers at a time wasn't going to be good enough anymore. So Ambedkar stages a mass protest. He gets everybody in the conference to go over the Shudwar water reservoir, and they drink out of the reservoir by hand. And so the belief is that if a Dalit touches the water is now polluted and no one can drink. And so by doing this act of defiance, he's throwing, dirt in the face of all the castemen. And so what happens after that, the Hindu castemen, they attack him that night. And they come at him with, Ambedkar and all the other Dalits, they came at them with sticks. And they were beating them bloody. And the Dalits were trying to fight back as best they could, but they also knew if they went too hard, that could even bring more trouble down on them. Then the high caste Hindus went the legal route and tried to get the Dalits barred from the reservoir. But at this time, Britain was still in charge of the area. So when they went to court over this, the Dalits ended up winning because the British government didn't recognize these caste distinctions. And an important thing, at this time, Gandhi was already working in India to bring freedom. And Ambedkar did ask Gandhi for help, and Gandhi refused. So these actions went on from about April in 1927 to December. And so on December 25th of 1927, Ambedkar makes a huge demonstration, and he burns the book called Manusmriti. And Manusmriti is the truth of Manu, and Manu's the one who created the caste laws.
That system, right?
And when they burn that book, they're saying that they now reject the caste system. So that's a big landmark day for Dalits. So our December 25th, we're celebrating the burning of Manusmriti. Yes, style of life matters. So,
Mm.
1930 Roundtable Conference. So, this is when Gandhi gets into the picture and the problems between Gandhi and Ambedkar. So, they're born around the same time, and Gandhi is born in India. He goes to England to also study law. And once he's done with that, he actually moves to South Africa. And he lives in South Africa for 21 years. And so what made him prompted in social justice was he was a lawyer and he was making great money. So he got himself a first class ticket to a train. And when he got to the first class, they were like, you can't be here because you're colored. And they put him in the same car as the Africans. And he felt that was a slight far beyond what he could take. So what he does is he petitions the British government, but he's trying to get the Indians to be seen as better than the Africans, but not as good as the whites. And ADOS people talk about this a lot, how a lot of the immigrants and non-black minorities want to play this middle ground. So this is where all this is kind of coming from. So he first petitions, he wants to show how useful the Indians could be to the British Empire. So when the Zulus have their uprising in 1906, I think it is, the Zulus have a rebellion. And so he petitions the government to let Indians into the army. Well, the British, back then, they had what they called martial people and non-martial people. And they didn't believe Indians were martial people, so they wouldn't allow them to be soldiers. But Gandhi keeps fighting and fighting and fighting, and he becomes part of the ambulance corps. So he made the Indians ambulance, not ambulance, but stretcher bearers back then. The equivalent paramedic type role. And so he wrote extensively in South African newspapers advocating for Indians to join the British movement in suppressing Africans. He often talked about how he didn't believe blacks worked in these articles. And one of his other great achievements, or big achievements, was that at the post office, there used to be a colored entrance and a white entrance. And he changed it to where there was an African entrance, an Asian entrance, and a white entrance. He was always trying to improve his people's stature within the British colonial system. So because he was able to get all those wins, the Indian National Conference in India asked for him to come and help them in India. Okay? So he's helping out with the Indian National Conference, Indian National Congress, the congressman. And that's a party in India. And Ambedkar starts the Indian Republican Party. And he named it the Indian Republican Party because one of his great favorite leaders was Lincoln. And he was very in tune with the Freedmen movement. And in his books, I can't think of the name of it right now, but he talks about the freedmen struggle in America. And he talks about how great it was that they could actually help to fight in their own freedom. And he looked at Lincoln and people like that as heroes. And Ambedkar knew a lot about America. He also, because he writes the Indian Constitution, and he studied Jefferson to know to learn how he should write the Constitution. So he talks a lot about America in a lot of his works, and he has a very keen understanding of the freedmen struggle, and he sees it as analogous to the Dalit struggle. So the 1930 Roundtable Conference. And so the Roundtable Conference starts, and they're trying to decide how to make India free. And the Dalits actually have their own group within the Indian Roundtable Conference. And they say that they're not going to separate from British rule unless they get some guarantees that they will have a certain amount of power in the new government. Because the Brits actually would advocate for Dalits because they don't respect the caste hierarchy. And when the let me get my notes real quick, because I had it all in here, so I don't. Here we go. So Ambedkar's working in the first roundtable conference, and he actually gets what's called weightage for the Dalits. So weightage means that the way it was originally set up was the Dalits they would be able to vote in the general elections, but they would also have a special election of just the Dalits. And they would have a certain amount of seats that would be reserved only for Dalits. And so by doing that, they would have a certain amount of people in Congress advocating specifically for them. Freedmen know about specific advocation. I know y'all know about this. So that's why he wanted weightage. Now, Muslims got weightage and Sikhs got weightage. But Gandhi only protested the Dalits having weightage. And so Gandhi's argument, he was trying to say that giving Dalits weightage would make untouchability permanent. He wanted to, so with Gandhi, his goal wasn't just to end the caste system. So the caste system by this time in 1930 had like thousands of castes in it, okay? So what he wanted to move to was from caste to the Varna system. And the Varna system has 4 levels in it. It's priest, soldier or king, seller, and then laborer. A Dalit is not part of Hinduism. They have never been considered Hindus, and they've never been considered brothers to the Hindu. So what Gandhi wanted to do to add them as a 5th category within Hinduism, he wanted them to keep their traditional occupations, including manual scavenging, which is cleaning sewers. And so the Dalits always had the lowliest jobs in society. So Gandhi wanted them to keep those lowly jobs, but there wouldn't be untouchability in that if you touched a Dalit or around a Dalit, you would need to be cleansed. And also Dalits would get to go into temples, because Dalits weren't even allowed into temples or even within a certain radius of a temple. So Gandhi begins his fast that we were told in school Gandhi fasted to end untouchability. Gandhi fasted to keep Dalits from having weightage in Congress.
Right.
And so he's on his hunger strike and he's about to die. Ambedkar could have just let him die because he won what he's supposed to get. But Ambedkar understood that might cause more backlash than help. So what Ambedkar did, he made a compromise with him, and that was called the Pune Pact. And so going forward, there would be seats reserved for Dalits, and it would be more than what they originally agreed to. But the electorate would be a general electorate. It wouldn't be a special electorate of just Dalits. So you have to get Dalit candidates that would appeal to the masses. But that was the best deal they could get at the time, and that's what they went with. So over the years, Ambedkar keeps advocating, keeps writing, and towards the end of his life, he decides that Buddhism is the way to go, and so he makes the Navayana form of Buddhism, and the chief tenet of it is the rejection of all the Hindu gods, the belief that none of those Hindu gods are true, and none of the things within the caste system are the truth. So it's the realization of the equality of all men, and that's the foundation of Navayana Buddhism. And so this is in, I want to say 55. I might not have that date 100% right, but it was in October 14th in 55 that he had a mass conversion of Dalits and others. There are other people that converted too, and he rebirthed Buddhism in India at that point, because Buddhists had been run out of India, even though it was born there. So Ambedkar dies in 55. Gandhi dies sometime after, if I remember correctly. And so when Gandhi was building his ashram, there was a white man named E. Stanley Jones. Okay, so E. Stanley Jones was an American, and he originally came to India to preach Christianity to lower caste people, Dalits, Shudras, tribesmen, because they have tribesmen in India back then. And so he comes to India and he meets some high caste Hindus. And they say instead of evangelizing to the poor, you should evangelize to us. We're at the top of society. If we convert, then many people will follow us because they want to be like us. So that's how he ends up meeting Gandhi. And he's very impressed by what Gandhi did. And he was able to win freedom for India without being violent. So when E. Stanley Jones ends his mission in India, he comes to America. And E. Stanley Jones, he knows A. Philip Randolph in the March on Washington movement. So the March on Washington movement, A. Philip Randolph, that started around the 40s. And so E. Stanley Jones started talking to the people that were with A. Philip Randolph about Gandhi, and also the people that start CORE, because they started in the March on Washington movement. Mm-hmm. So the idea of Gandhi as this saint comes from E. Stanley Jones. So the Dalits at this time don't have enough power to get to America and explain their side of the story. So in E. Stanley Jones' book, Gandhi, he does mention Ambedkar, but he says that Ambedkar was just trying to jockey for Buddhism, because if caste ended, he would still have a marker that can delineate those that were untouchables in one group, and they could win concessions based on them all being the same religion. Because remember, Muslims had weightage and Sikhs had weightage in the Congress. So to shore everything up, he wanted everybody to be Buddhist, and they make it as if it was a political play. And a lot of people nowadays, when you talk about Ambedkar, they'll try to talk back to you and say, oh, he just did that so he could try to win weightage in Congress. But anybody who really studies Ambedkar understands how deep of a Buddhist he was. He wrote some of the most in-depth Buddhist histories that there were. He had been studying ever since he was a little kid. And you see Buddhist principles throughout all of his work, even his economics work, because even when he's writing about gold versus silver, or just gold, he advocates, if I remember correctly, he added for using gold and silver, because it expands the amount of money you can have in the economy. If you take it down to one or the other, you actually contract the amount of money in the economy. And he says that I myself am a laborer. I just am an academic laborer. So he was trying to come up with economic policies that would do well for the workers and people like that. And if you read it, you can see the Buddhism in an economic paper. And it's a beautiful thing to see, because you're like, I can incorporate this Buddhism in whatever I'm doing, whether it's economics, law, plumbing even. You can incorporate all these principles into it. And that's one thing I love about Ambedkar.
Sounds amazing, huh?
Yeah. He's Ambedkar's one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century.
Yeah, I concur. When I read that the man basically taught himself how to speak Pali, or how to read Pali, I was like, what? he learned how to read an ancient language and taught himself how to do that. And then I thought about it. I'm like, he essentially wanted to go straight to the source. He wasn't taking secondhand from anybody. And in order for him to try to construct or formulate something that was going to work for his people, right, he had to understand those works in and out. So and
also another thing I love about Ambedkar is he did study all religions, and he had beautiful things to say about Islam. One thing he said about Muslims is Muslims all stick together. He's like, if you got 4 Muslims together, you got a problem. They're gonna stick together, man. If you try to mess with them, you got to take all 4 of them on. You know what I mean? And he loved that about the Muslims and that camaraderie Muslims have. And he also often criticized the Christian community in India, because he felt like they weren't understanding in their philosophy enough. And these missionaries would just come, get them to convert, and leave. They wouldn't make sure that these Christian Indians had enough to really study their religion. And oftentimes the Indian Christians would just add Jesus to the Hindu pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's I had a question about Ambedkar, since he kind of, I don't want to say converted, but I guess you can say that in a way that he did kind of convert to Buddhist tenets as he started to adopt more and more throughout his life. Did he ever um, regret or do a takesy backsies of advocating for basically an additional layer of separation or apartheid between Africans and Asians when he was in South Africa?
Gandhi? No,
No,
he never.
no, not Gandhi, because no, we already knew Gandhi was a racist. I'm talking about Ambedkar.
So Ambedkar was never in South Africa. Ambedkar never lived
Oh,
in South Africa.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Only
So
Gandhi lived
Gandhi was the one who actually. Okay, I thought you said that Ambedkar was the
no,
one
no. Yeah, it was
that went
Gandhi
to
living in
South
South Africa. And Becker, when he was in Colombia, he actually worked in a kitchen and was good friends with a lot of black people. From what I
Right.
understand, he liked jazz. He would go listen to jazz on the weekends.
Well, there you go, Arthur. That's a friend for you. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If it was back then, y'all could go to a club together. So.
There you go. But let
Exactly.
me ask you this. Let me ask you this. In regards to what you gleaned from this man's writings, and anytime that you read somebody, you got some speculation about their character. Do you think that his leanings was more so re- uh, uh, getting people to be of a particular religion in his viewpoint, or was his leaning more so a way to fix Indian society?
So the thing of it is, the two are so intermingled. I think so. Ambedkar's advocation of Buddhism is the Dalits' original religion. So,
Right.
well, I got some time so I can get into this. So what happened was you had Buddha coming up, and he started the Buddhist religion.
Yes.
And it starts picking up more with what they call the broken men. And so back before there was a caste system, they had tons of tribes. And so if something happened where you lost your tribe, you would rent yourself out to defend another tribe. So
Mhm.
they would stay on these outskirts of the town. And if someone tried to attack, the Dalits would be the first, the broken men would be the first to fight them off.
Mhm.
Well, so Buddhism starts growing more with the broken men because they're not part of any tribe, so they can't really. Because before they were castes, they were really tribes. So,
Mhm.
so it starts growing more and more with them. And so hundreds of years pass, and this great king, he's considered one of the greatest kings of all time in our religion. Ashoka takes over India. He makes the first animal protection laws in world history. The first time they wrote down an animal protection law was under the reign of Ashoka. He builds a huge empire, and hundreds of years last. And then there's this other king, this rebel named Pushi Maitra, and he's a caste Hindu. He overthrows the Buddhist kings and then makes Buddhism, tries to outlaw Buddhism.
Mm.
So they go through hundreds of years of persecution under the Hindu order.
Mhm.
And in 1200 and something, the Muslims come in. And so the Muslims come in and take over northern India. And they take over northern India. And then a lot of the Hindus move south, and they even fight the Buddhists even more. And so another thing about Buddhism is, like, it's very hard to become a monk. So when you're going through persecution and they're killing monks, it's hard to replace them. And so people ended up over the years dropping out of Buddhism. And many of them picked up Hinduism because they had nothing else. And many of them picked up Islam. And so a lot of Southern Indian Muslims were descended from the old Buddhist. And so the people that wouldn't give up Buddhism were ostracized. And that's where untouchability came from, because they wouldn't give up their religion.
Right.
And Becker went back and found many Buddhist chants and things that were part of the Dalit culture naturally.
Right.
Derek and I have had several conversations about Buddhism. And I've always told him that I've always felt that the advent of the monk in Buddhism was really an accretion, because the Buddha Sakyamuni did not intend for Buddhism to be locked up in temples or belong to a particular kind or class of people. It was really about getting people to understand a very fundamental but complex law of cause and effect, along with having certain behaviors that make society better even through their suffering. And I've always believed that whenever monkism is introduced to any kind of Buddhist philosophy, that is failure. Because I do think that Buddhism is something that should be a lay thing. It should be an everyday thing. It should be an understanding. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I
Well,
think that sounds like the direction that your guy is going.
yeah, I mean, when he does the mass conversion, it's all lay people. He doesn't have monks because he's like most Dalits don't have a lot of money. So we don't have the money to give to somebody for them not to work.
Mhm.
So he wanted all the priests working, you know, and making their own money. And he also felt like that would keep people more honest, because if I don't need money from you, I'm gonna tell you the truth, you know. Whereas somebody who needs your donation money, they're going to be more likely to tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
But now in Navayana, we have monks, though. I mean, because we work with a lot of people from, like, I work with a lot of Theravada Buddhists. So we all kind of work together now because the numbers are so low.
Yeah.
So we kind of just all work together now. So, I mean, I enjoy talking to monks personally when I have a problem.
Mhm.
That's just a personal thing for me. But I can definitely see someone saying from a practicality standpoint that the community doesn't have enough money to let people just sit off in a temple all day. So that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah. Now, you know, in the Soka Gakkai, there are no monks or priests. It's all a lay setup.
Okay, I didn't know this.
Yeah, we don't have no priests. We don't have no monks. It's all lay people. We do, of course, have a paid lay management organization form, but it's not extensive like it would be, let's say, in a church. You understand what I'm saying? That kind of thing we keep at the very minimum. But I've always felt that I can have a better conversation with a layperson that has to deal with the daily worries of life just like I do. You know, and I think that when you are getting Buddhism from a lay person, they are better able to connect the ideal with the everyday.
I can see
because
that.
they're flowing in the same stream that you are.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Okay, so let's talk about how this particular Ambedkar and how he took Buddhist tenets, and then modernized it. I would say to fit a social justice realm, and how can that be applicable to the plight of the freedmen? I know that you mentioned that he was very versed in American politics, especially the plight of the Negro. Also, it seems like he's very aware of how Christianity was either benign, practice benign neglect towards Negroes, or they were, and Indians. Well, let's just say everybody. Yeah. And then, but at the same time, either it was benign neglect, or they were absolutely participatory to oppressive behavior and practices towards what is considered society's bottom caste. So with that being said, what are some of the tenets that you would see specifically in Navayana Buddhism, correct?
Yes, Navayana.
Navayana. Okay, Navayana Buddhism, and how it could be applicable to the freedmen struggle that's even happening today.
Okay, so one thing, one of the chief things is the rejection of Hindu gods, and the assertion that you are not Hindu, like you are Dalit or Freeman or whatever other ethnicity you are.
Wait a minute, let me ask you this. That's good. So are you telling me that Ambedkar, he stripped away any supernaturalism that might have been?
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's one of
Yeah.
the things I like about it is he strips away all of the he strips away sorry about that. He strips away the metaphysical and the
Oh man, but
Oh.
he was talking about, yeah, that's a big tenet of what we're doing. It's about being in the here and now, being in the moment for us is dealing with this struggle that we got to have. We're not worried about some far off deity entreating on our behalf. And that's not happening. We're into using each other to get where we are. So after the Shadwar or Reservoir, he wrote a treatise on what happened. At the end of the treatise, he says that never really trust the wealthy because the wealthy will never be more than benevolent despots. He's like, never trust people based on class, like all poor people, because he's like, a poor casteman will never give up his caste privilege for you.
True.
He's like, Dalits have to rely on each other.
Right.
And I think that's a big tenet of Derek's back. Finish your thought there.
Sorry, y'all. Sorry. Technical difficulties, y'all.
Stop that metaphysics stuff.
Yeah, well, that
we
was the
should
basic
always
point.
stop at metaphysics.
Yeah.
Metaphysics. Always stop there.
Yeah.
What I like about what he did is he essentially got rid of all of that, and a lot of that is attached to kind of the monastic traditions with regards to the philosophies and stuff like that. I mean, Ambedkar, he ditched the Four Noble Truths. The truth of suffering, the truth of cause, the truth of succession, the truth of the way. He did not agree with those because what he's saying is at the end of the day is the traditional idea of Hindu karma, which translates into Buddhism, right? Is not correct from his point of view. What he was saying is that a person does not create their own suffering. Society does. Okay. Yeah. Now within some realm, of course. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David. You break it down.
So his idea of karma, truthfully, he did believe in karma, but his idea of karma matches up with sociology. The idea that
wait a minute.
Right.
Okay.
So, wait, hold on, Arthur.
You done hit a nerve now, Dave.
Yeah,
Keep going, man.
Go ahead. No, I want to hear this because I have a follow up. I have a follow up for you.
Yeah, the karma is the idea of cause and effect.
Right.
So Hindus believe your suffering comes from your birth. So if your father was a Dalit and you're a Dalit, and your grandfather was a Dalit and you're going to be a Dalit, and you're going to have a life of suffering and you're going to be cleaning sewers and cobbling shoes and whatever the worst jobs are. You're born a Brahmin, you'll have that life, So when Ambedkar looked at it, he looked at it like when you're suffering, there were societal conditions that caused the suffering. So that is karma. And our new way to study karma is sociology, to look at.
But you know what, David? Now you know the root word that describes karma in a nutshell is action. Okay,
yes.
And I got you on that one. It's like, and I like that. I actually like that idea of the society causing things, but at the same time, karma and Buddhism still puts the responsibility back on the individual to change things. The Hindu idea makes karma fixed, but the Buddhist idea makes karma conditional, depending upon the actions of the individual that finds himself in a particular station in life.
And
absolutely.
That's why social justice is integral to Buddhism. It's a way to express your Buddhism.
Right. Let me say one thing. He also masterfully intersects or intertwines the aspect of also class with that same argument, Arthur.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Because he's essentially saying at the end of the day is as an individual, you may be an individual, but you're in a society and all societies are made up of class.
Sure.
True.
Right. Sure. Even with the individual having to take responsibility for their own actions, the cause and effect, it's still going to boil down to a societal aspect, even as individuals. Sorry, Cynthia.
No. I was that was good, but because in practicing Nichiren Buddhism, it's very much so a self-directive philosophy, right? Yes. And with that being said, is that we put the onus on the individual as far as to change, if they're experiencing, some type of what they call sancho shima, or if they're experiencing some type of suffering, is that, you know, they can actually put in their particular work in order to change their karma, right?
Mhm.
But, you know, but I can't just leave completely out the societal effects that that has wrought on certain individuals, depending on what group they belong to, right? You know, because like uh, there is a very distinctive behavior that is wrought on us as freedmen, you know, from our government and also from others who have come down traditionally through the systematic and institutional racism.
Mhm.
So to just say like, oh, okay, well your karma is your own and you can completely ignore that. I do happen to kind of see that behavior in some other like Buddhists, even within our particular practice, because like they just always want to focus on the individual, even though that I think that it's important to do that, because like there are some responsibilities that and accountabilities that you have to take on your own, right? You know,
Right.
you have to recognize and make a distinction of, okay, this is something that I can change, this is something that I can be involved in, this is something that I can do in order for this to change for the better for me. But you know it, but still we can't be completely blinded to societal aspects and how they happen to be set in order for it to function so per se, but still be very depressive and oppressive to a group of to certain groups of people.
True.
You know, so it's kind of like I kind of look at like karma in a sense of individual karma that one may possess through actions of their own, and collective karma that actually deals with the environment that's around them. You know, but and I think that it's important to really, you know, make a difference, because one of the things that I don't ever, at least I do this for myself, is that I don't try to conflate, you know, societal oppression and what have you to what I can do for myself, right? Like you don't necessarily want to just like take on the moniker like, well, you know, I'm oppressed, so I do nothing, right? You know,
Right.
kind of like that whole thing about to sit in the temple until somebody come and get me. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? But at the same time, there is still that aspect of like, okay, well, I cannot ignore this particular portion of of societal behaviors and history and things of that nature when it comes to myself, and also ones who actually share my lineage, my background, and my history, right? So it's an interesting how, you know, Ambedkar would talk about, and this it's actually like sparked my interest. I really want to read more about him and some of his writings, but
Right.
it's very interesting how he really talked about more so collective karma as far as like, you know, societal action, you know, towards, you know, groups of people, individuals and the like, and how that needs to be addressed in order for it to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, David, I don't like you, man.
Well,
You got me spending all this my extra money on these books.
No, 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 no,
See,
no, no, no,
no, really.
no.
You
You
want
gonna hold off the books, sir. But go ahead, David.
no, one of the things that I really appreciate about Ambedkar is his there's an aspect of shrewdness about him. I mean, this is a guy that's extremely intelligent because he understands on one hand that they're stuck in a political situation, right? That's directly tied into religiosity. But at the
Right.
same time, he understands that the conditioning that his people have gone through 1900 years, you know, essentially has also conditioned them to the
Yeah,
point to where the people were originally another religion and they become and accepted to some degree. I say that, you know, carefully, with the position of the untouchable, which is outside of the caste. Now, it wasn't their fault on that, but you can understand how over time people will keep getting battered down and battered down and battered down. And as the society grows, essentially, people essentially will end up being in this position. So I've actually read Ambedkar, and I'm glad you said what you said, David, about the aspects about Buddhism, because I actually questioned in my own mind. I said, I'm wondering if Ambedkar is at some points in time struggling with his own beliefs with regards to the world, ideas of cosmology, et cetera, right? Because on one hand, he has to know, he's got to contemplate, if there's a God, why am I going through such hell? As he says, no man has suffered like me, right? At the end of the day. But at the same time, to try to also keep a sense of spirituality, I guess, through these, and also detach himself from a position that he's born into that's also tied to this religiosity, right? And then the awareness that he knows that, listen, there's 40 million of us. It's no way that I'm going to get all of us to just deconvert, right? And just throw down Hinduism without having something there to replace it. And this thing that has to replace it has to actually fit the people. Who gives a scram damn what somebody else thinks about what we're doing over here? This has to work to get the people out of their situation. Because the truth is that the philosophy will develop itself. Right? As people move and maneuver themselves out of their social political position, it naturally is going to develop itself. That's what happened to them in the first place, in regression, if you will. Right? So I just wanted to drop this on you to say that he's aware at the end of the day that he can't totally walk away with religion. Me and Arthur talk about this a lot. He knows, well, I hope he knows, I don't totally disagree with his idea that, you know, we probably could do away with a religion with regards to the formalities around the world, right? But we got to have something. But this is what Ambedkar says. And he said this in it's the origin of Hinduism, I believe. Yeah. Right? He breaks this down. He says, religion is
the origin of caste.
The origin of what?
Caste. Origin of caste.
Caste. Origin of caste. Okay, sorry. It's. I might have this wrong. It might be the ideology of Hinduism, but it comes from whichever one is Hinduism, David. Yeah. But he says, religion is a social force. As I pointed out, religion stands for a scheme of divine governance. The scheme becomes an ideal for society to follow. The idea may not be existent in the sense that it is something that is constructed, but although not existent, it is real. For an ideal, it has full operative force, which is inherent in every ideal. Those who deny the importance of religion not only forget this, they also fail to recognize how great the partisan sanction, I know I'm saying that wrong, partisan sanction that lies behind a religious ideal, as compound with what are purely secular ideal. This is probably due to the lack which one sees between the real and the ideal. That's powerful. Like, whether you agree or not, it's like, wow, that's an introspective.
Now, you know what, David, let me tell you this.
Wait, hold on before you say that, Arthur, because I just wanted to just comment on Derek's statement, and then we do have a question in the chat that we want to get to.
Yeah, there was a lot of questions I wanted to answer. I was just talking during.
Oh, okay. But no, I was just going to just say really quickly that that's just basically, he was just basically saying that we as human beings have a proclivity to make up religions. Yeah, we do. I mean, right. we really do. And actually, for us to be able to try to understand the world around us, so to go to a purely secular idea is almost like fighting against human nature in of itself. Like, why do we still have? What is it now?
You get it.
Yeah, no, I get it, because I share that idea. I mean, that's why I was saying, because even for myself, even though I am unapologetically an atheist, I still practice Buddhism by myself, because just being purely just having a stance of I don't believe in God is not enough to guide my life. You understand what I'm saying?
Right. Also. Yeah. How do you get people to motivate themselves behind their belief system? Because you're not going to be able to change everybody's mind or enlighten everybody's mind to what you know as an individual. So how do you work with people with where they're at, which religion is a fundamental part of society at this point in human existence, whether we...
Well, you know what? I would say even Ambedkar's brands of Buddhism would be a tremendous improvement over what our people are dealing with right now. Because,
Which
like
is
I told you before,
Christianity.
Derek, you know that I am the top atheist in the entire world.
Wow.
I am the
I'm
Pope
second.
of atheists.
And I'm
Okay,
Cynthia the atheist.
right. But just like Cynthia pointed out, that's just a position.
All right.
But when I found that Buddhism, especially SGI brand of Buddhism, is godless, it is separate from supernatural thought, and the cause and effect makes sense to me. I found a philosophy that I'm able to deploy my humanity in society. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, like I told you before, Derek, we are in trouble as a people. We have to get away from belief systems and get over to understanding systems, which Buddhism is an
Yeah,
understanding system. It's not a
yeah,
Yeah.
belief
that's
system.
very
Yeah.
much true. That's
Yeah.
very much true.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
For
we
sure.
need to,
There's no debate there. There's
so,
no argument. Totally agreed.
guys, we want to get to the question that's in the chat, please.
yeah,
Yeah.
so one of the questions I saw was how Navayana Buddhism helps me with my mental health. Buddhism in general helps me to face face the realities of life in a realistic way. I've learned to fully embrace what's going on around me, look into my body, and see how it actually physically makes me feel. Like when something good or negative happens to you, it generates sensations in your body, and you can actually sit and listen to those sensations and get grounded in that. And because I can sit and handle it, I'm not running from it. I can actually face the problems in front of me. Before, it would hurt so bad I couldn't face it and I would run. And for some people, running is eating, and some people running is drugs, and some people running is watching TV. But it helped me to actually face the negative and the positive things in my life and be able to actually handle it. So
Yeah.
that's how Buddhism has helped me. And Ambedkar has helped me because I'm sitting here, and I'm telling you, a lot of these Buddhist circles, if you really go into them, there's very few minorities in them.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I always felt out of place, like my struggle wasn't something that could be talked about here. Because the first Buddhist circle I was in, we had something called Dharma sharing. And people would talk about whatever was going on in their life that was upsetting them at that point in their life. And the thing of it with me, when it came out to me, I always passed, because a lot of times what I'm going through involves race, and it involves, disadvantages that accrued over time. And I can't talk to you about what's happening to me in this week unless I talk to you about race. And we're going to have to have that conversation. And I knew I would make everybody feel uncomfortable. So I needed to find something in Buddhism where I could anchor it and say, yeah, my struggle, the way I look at the world, is part of this philosophy. And just like Eric said, I can't worry about if all the other Buddhists in my circle understand this. Because I'm the only Ambedkarite in the weekly circle I go to. And it doesn't bother me anymore, because I know that I have a guru. I have someone who I can look to and say, that's my archetype, and other people can have their archetypes too. If they want to just be like a monk in a temple, that's fine, but I have my archetype, and I'm fine with it. And so it helped me to feel more in place in this new community. It's more Black Buddhist circles, though. I would love to start one or something like that.
I think you guys are on to something.
we got another question. Go ahead.
Okay, so you want to learn practice Buddhism. Okay, so Arthur was complaining about expensive books. So all of Ambedkar's works, they are at Columbia University. There's a Columbia University website that has all his works on PDF. And there's 2 or 3 other websites that have all his work, and I have them all on PDF. If we can get together after this and we want to make a Google Drive with all the PDFs on it, we can do it and make it public so people can get it, or just with an email link. So tomorrow, when I'm awake again and stuff, we'll talk about it. We'll set up a Google account, a Gmail account, and I'll post all the PDFs on there. And if someone needs it, they can just put a a thing in the chat or in one of the ADOS groups, and we'll just send it out, and everybody will have the PDFs.
Okay.
You actually, if you can create a Google link that any person who has the link, regardless of what their email address is, we can put it into we can just like modify this show and put it in the description below so that people can go to
we'll hit
it.
that up. But there's a library at Columbia University, and there's another one in India where it has it in English and Hindi.
Mhm.
So I'll find that one too. But on my website, Black Leadership Analysis, if you type Ambedkar in the search bar, I've summarized all his works into like 5 or 6 pages. So if you don't have a lot of time and you want to learn quick, you could go through my site at blackleaderanalysis.com. I have his library there, and I have summaries of all his work if you don't have a ton of time. But if you want to get one book to start, get The Buddha and His Dharma, because that gives you a good overview of Ambedkar's philosophy. He relates the story of Buddha in a caste situation, and he also connects it to Western philosophy. So it'll be something that we can easily reference because we're Western thinking naturally. So it'll be something we could really reference.
You answered my second question before I even asked it. I was like, what's the holy book of Navayana?
I got to get this in. David, from your standpoint, how does Ambedkar's philosophy through you relate to reparations?
Well, one thing I love about him, because he was fighting for weightage in the new parliament.
Okay.
Like I said, weightage means that you get a separate electorate and you have reserved seats in that parliament for you. So Ambedkar looked at reparations from a political standpoint, giving us a certain amount of political power. What we're looking at now is more of an economic reparations. And when he makes these cases, I love the dialogue between Ambedkar and Gandhi. There is a movie, it's on YouTube, on Ambedkar's life.
Oh, really?
It's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
And him and Gandhi talk. And Gandhi, he uses every middle-class liberal dodge on race. Gandhi uses every single one of them.
Wow.
Like, I mean, and because he was saying at first, like, you know, the caste, one of the things about caste is that you're not allowed to marry outside your caste.
Right.
And a Dalit man who dates a Brahmin woman risk his life. They would lynch a Dalit man for being with a Brahmin. And we know about that here in America. You know what I mean? And Gandhi was like, well, that it's not a bad thing to have a law against intercaste marriage, because you also have laws about you can't marry your family. And it's like, that's completely not relevant. Like, of course, it's nothing like marrying a family member. And he says, one thing Gandhi's quoted as saying is like, well, when I die, I want to come back as a Dalit. I was like, okay, yeah, after you die. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. That just let me know that you don't even believe in any of that reincarnation shit, if that's the case.
There you go.
Right.
There you go. It's a power play.
Yeah.
Right.
And like
I think we had another one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we had a couple.
One of the questions was, how many Navayana Buddhists are there in India?
Navayana Buddhists in India. So most of the Dalits consider themselves Buddhist. And so I've never been to India, but I understand there's a good amount, especially in Maharashtra. I can't pronounce it correctly. It's Maharashtra province. It's the province that would have Mumbai in it. And so the Dalits there are very deep with Navayana Buddhists. And I really want to save up some money and go so I can really learn. But I just hadn't got around to that yet.
Yeah.
To go into India?
Cool. Yeah. So we're about to close it out, but before we do that, did you have anything you wanted to say with regards to the relation, parallels, or intersections of caste and race, MLK, and Ambedkar?
One of the things, if you read the Buddha or Karl Marx, and then King had a speech on communism, and they actually agreed on their ideas on communism. They both thought communism was a coercive system to get people to work together. And what they had to do was let King said it was the love of God enter into us to transform our hearts. Whereas Ambedkar was talking about how Buddhism can be a vehicle not only for the Dalits, but also the high caste Hindus to really embrace equality.
Right.
And so they both really agreed on that. And the only thing I need to mention, the term Harijan, because King actually talked about caste a good amount. He always used the term Harijan because that's what Gandhi would use. Harijan is another derogation because it means children of God. But
right.
That's what
Come on with it, bro.
Yeah, but that's what it literally means. But that's also what you would call someone if their mother was a prostitute. So like it's a very
Whoa.
Thing. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So if someone says that in India, that's like what they're trying to say. Like that's fighting words. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you know, and King never understood because he didn't have any Dalits around him. So he didn't understand that was a negative thing. But King said when he went to India, he was introduced as an untouchable from America.
Right.
And he got mad at first. But then once he sat down and looked and thought about things, he was like, yes, I am. I embrace this identity. And he saw himself in league with the Dalits. It's just unfortunate he never got, when he came to India, it was Gandhi's memorial group that brought him. So they brought him and showed him the exact stuff they want as a Gandhiite. You know what I mean? And so they showed him a certain idea of India that wasn't there. They brought him around the 2 or 3 Dalits Gandhi helped. You know what I mean? So MLK never got to really understand it, but Ambedkar's grandson got to meet MLK the third, and they've started a relationship. So it's going to be interesting seeing what comes of that. So yeah, we're at an hour, so I can come back and talk more about it.
Yes.
Love it. Would love it, bro. This is a great conversation, man.
Yeah. I can come back more. I can talk. There's a couple of things in Buddhism I want to talk about. I'll talk about Derek. I'll tell Derek about it tomorrow, give him some ideas, and see what we can talk about.
I want to say one last thing, and then we got to close it out. So the last thing you said about the term that Gandhi wanted to use for the Dalits, right?
Arjan.
Right. The children of God, right? He wanted to baptize them under this. And I have this, we've, myself and Arthur and Cynthia have had conversations about Black liberation theology, right? And Arthur's fully aware. He's made a comment to say, you know, I don't want to be a children of a lesser God, right? And to me, that's almost what Gandhi was saying there, right? At the end of the day, like he's trying to give him that same type of branding, Arthur. Right. And Ambedkar comes right around. He says, no, we're Dalits. That's broken and smashed. That's who we are. We ain't going with this clean up, make you feel good at the end of the day. Oh, you're children of God, but at the end of the day, you don't want to actually break bread with us. Nope, we're the broken and smashed. You know what I mean? So I thought that was powerful, and it made me think of you, Arthur, the conversations we had, you know, when I read that. So
look, millions of people will find out that I'm right years from now. That is but that's okay. Y'all catch up.
All right, y'all. We ran just a little bit over. This has been a fantastic conversation. We really appreciate you, David, for coming through.
Oh yeah.
And we're looking forward to another conversation for sure. I'm sure I'm speaking for my co-hosts also as well.
Yeah, we loved it.
I didn't do this at the beginning of the show, but I want to go ahead and do this now and acknowledge our other co-host, Kelly Matthews. She's not with us here, but she's with us in spirit. And I want to let you know that she's also part of the Rare Team.
Also in the chat.
She was in the chat, you know what I mean? So I got to give Kelly a shout out. Hey, Kelly, we love you. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close out with a quote that came from a young lady who wrote a book called B.R. Ambedkar, The Life of the Mind and a Life in Politics. And her name is Ayana Venjay. I pronounced the last name wrong, I'm positive, but I liked what she had to say here. And we're going to close out with this. 25 years ago, on the Gangetic Flat Plain, on the foothills of the Himalayas, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, revolted against Hindu orthodoxy and showed a different path towards equality, compassion, and liberation. He was the first revolution, as Ambedkar called it, against the caste system. And the time had come to recapture that legacy and that potentiality once more, since it was the original Buddhists who over time had been reduced to untouchables. Modern day Dalits had to take back the true history of protest and radical legalitarianism that was theirs all along to claim and to reclaim. And with that, I say good night and appreciate you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.